Right, we are going to start off our first lecture on Warring Kingdoms Unite, the establishment of empires in China with the Qin and Han dynasties. Right, so that's what we're going to be looking at today. Right. Now, we're going to start with the Warring States period, the time that happens after the last dynasty that we talked about, the Zhou dynasty. And so, just like what we talked about with India, we have periods of unification under an empire and then periods of disunity where we have different territorial princes building their own kingdoms. And a lot of times, those kingdoms will war with each other over territory or resources and different things like that. So this Warring States period lasts from 403 to 221 BCE for most of the 5th century. We've got 7 different Chinese kingdoms that are all fighting over territory and power in the region. So it's going to take someone to come in to unite all of these kingdoms into one empire. And that is going to be in the person of Qin Huangdi, who is our founder of the Qin dynasty and China's first emperor. Now, the Qin dynasty lasts only about 15 years, from 221 to 206 BCE, and Qin Huangdi is going to rule for about 13 years of that. So not a very long dynasty, but it's still a very important one because it's the first one, and it unites China in a strong, unified empire. Okay, so a little bit of information about Qin Huangdi. He was born with the name Zhao Zheng in 259 BCE, and he ruled the Qin people on the western border of China. So he was already in a position of power. And then eventually he uses that power to conquer the other kingdoms that are warring with one another and unifies them under one empire, which is going to be this Qin dynasty. Okay. So you can see the territory that he is able to conquer. This whole region here is going to fall under Qin Huangdi's reign. Okay, and you can see at the top here some defensive walls, which are going to become um, the Great Wall of China. So we'll be looking at that as well. So, the Qin dynasty has to come at this issue of uniting these warring states from a position of strength. And so, Qin Huangdi employs one of our Chinese philosophies of legalism. We already talked about Confucianism and a little bit of Taoism. Legalism is going to be another one of those philosophies that promotes peace and order through very strict laws and harsh punishments. So, coming from a position of strength to try and keep everyone in order. Okay. And then Qin Huangdi also demonstrates his strength by building the Great Wall of China. He's trying to protect the Chinese people from nomadic peoples outside of the empire. So that would be kind of our earlier people related to the Mongols that John Green is always talking about. And so that is the main goal with building this wall. It connects earlier segments that were built under the Jia, Zhou, and Zhang dynasties. And he sort of pieces together a lot of those sections. And then other emperors will later add on to it as well to get what we know today as this 4,500-mile long wall in northern China. Okay, so it's pretty impressive for this time. So that is part of the strengthening of the Qin dynasty. He also takes the approach of organizing his empire in such a way that enables him to rule such a vast territory in East Asia. And he does that by establishing first a capital at Jianyang in eastern China. And then he divides the empire into provinces or districts that can be run by officials. So, kind of like what we have for the United States, where we have our federal government that rules over everything, but then we have our states that have governors that can kind of make some of their own decisions and rule on behalf of that larger system, in this case, Emperor Xuangdi. He also builds roads to help the armies control the empire. You've got to be able to get communication and people around the empire if you're going to function properly. And then he also, in the spirit of legalism, kills or imprisons anyone who's opposed to him to try to keep any opposition or rebellion down so the empire can can survive. He also makes a lot of economic and cultural improvements to China. And one of those is going to be big for their economy, the creation of one currency. And a currency is just a type of money. So we have dollars today, we have shekels, we have pounds, all those different currencies. So in China, they have one currency, which is going to make trade a lot easier. And they can do that with these coins that we have pictured right here. This was the type of monetary system that they had. He also standardized weights and measures. If you're going to have things in your empire run smoothly, you want to have standardization so that a foot in one region of the empire is the same length in another section of the empire. So all of those things are going to be standardized as well, which helps unify and strengthen the empire. And then he improved the writing system as well, and of course enforced a very strict law code to keep peace and order in the empire. Okay. Now, along with legalism, he wanted to restrict some freedoms of the people in China. And one of those ways that he did this was outlawing the ideas of Confucius and other thinkers from this time. He didn't want anyone questioning his authority, and he wanted to keep strict control over the information in his empire. And so he required people to learn from Qin scholars, people who agreed with him, and he actually went about destroying books and killing scholars who protested the burning of books, things about Chinese history and art and literature and things like that. You can see in this picture here, let me bring my pointer up. We have the burning books here, and then we have some scholars who are attempting to stop this from happening, but that's not working out too well at this point. So that was another sort of a mark of legalism at this time, and then also a way for Qin Huangdi to maintain control of his empire. Okay. And then he promoted other aspects of legalism as well, punishing bad behavior, rewarding good behavior, and emphasizing the importance of serving the government and the empire. You want to make sure that your people are supportive of you if you're going to hold on to power. But unfortunately, this came out very brutally and very strictly and resulted in a lot of death of people who didn't agree with him. Okay. Now, just like all of our empires that we have looked at and will look at, the empire eventually starts to decline. And that begins with the death of Qin Huangdi in 210 BCE. If you've got a really strong leader in place, if that leader is removed or he dies, you're going to need someone of equal strength to step into that role. Otherwise, some things are going to change in the empire. And so that is the case here with Qin Huangdi. After he died, there were about 4 years of chaos and civil war. His son was murdered, and then power eventually passes to his grandson. But again, he was not the strong ruler that Qin Huangdi was. And so rebellions end up breaking out all over the empire, and the empire falls after just 15 years in 206 BCE. And that is the end of the Qin dynasty. Okay. But right after that, we get a new dynasty established, the Han Dynasty, 206 BCE, and is in power until 220 CE. So we are getting into our common era here with the Han Dynasty, a pretty long dynasty here. And the founder of the Han Dynasty is Liu Wang. He restores order throughout China after that period of chaos after Qin Huangdi dies and the rebellions. And he creates a stable government that is less harsh than what we saw with the Qin dynasty. Still going to be pretty strict, but we're not going to see as much adherence to legalism. He's actually going to support Confucianism in certain aspects of the government, namely in his civil service system, promoting education and merit-based positions for people in his government. So that's going to be a bit of a change here for us for the Han dynasty. All right. Now, one of the greatest emperors of the Han Dynasty was Han Wudi, known as the warrior emperor. He reigns the Han Dynasty from 140 BCE to 87 BCE. And this is what is the major consideration for the Han Dynasty as the height of the Han's power. He rules for over 50 years in China, makes a lot of improvements to the Great Wall, strengthens the army, and expands the territory beyond what the Qin Dynasty was able to accomplish all over East Asia and then spreading out into some of those nomadic lands, which we'll see here with this map. So we can see here, the purple area here is the Han Empire, all right, going into the Silla Kingdom, which is modern day Korea, and then expanding out here into the Taklamakan Desert, which was a major area that a lot of the Mongol tribes, clans, had control of. All right, compared to our Qin dynasty, which only had control like this area right in here. All right, so much more expansive than we saw with the Qin. Now, again, we have the decline of our Han dynasty. We get a major economic strain for the Han. A lot of military expeditions in order to maintain and conquer all of that territory that we just saw on the map. And a growing gap between the rich and the poor creates a lot of tensions, which are going to spring up into rebellions in China. Now, this is very common across different empires. We'll see the death of emperors sometimes contributes to the decline of the empire, financial struggles, and then tensions between different groups. Those can be ethnic tensions, religious tensions, or in this case with the Han, economic tensions between different classes. So that is very common for the decline of empires. So we get some rebellions in the Han Dynasty. Major one is the Yellow Turban Uprising, which is pictured here, called the Yellow Turban Yellow Turban Uprising because of the yellow turbans that were worn by the people participating. So as we're starting to see this decline and a threat to power of the Han Dynasty, we start to see warlords gaining power. So these are people who are trying to take control of their own individual regions, much like we saw with the Warring States period. And so one of these warlords is Cao Pai, who is going to found his own dynasty, the Wei dynasty in northern China. And he reigns from 220 to 226 CE. So again, we're in the Common Era now. That doesn't last too long, just 6 years, and then eventually China breaks up into those regional kingdoms again. And so again, we've got these periods of unity and periods of regional kingdoms kind of doing their own thing here. Okay. So that is just an overview of the Qin and Han dynasties in China. Next week, we'll be taking a look at some of the major achievements of these different Chinese empires and moving on from there. All right.